Good evening. I am Ralph Berkeley. As moderator this evening, I welcome each candidate running for Beloit School Board, as well as the members of the audience, to the 2018 School Board Candidates Forum. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the Beloit League of Women Voters, the NAACP Beloit Chapter, and the Greater Beloit Area Chamber of Commerce. The forum this evening will be taped and aired before the April 3rd election, and will be aired on cable channel 991, and a link will be posted on the school district webpage. For the first part of the forum, questions were prepared by the sponsoring organizations. As the moderator, I will direct the same 3 questions to all of the candidates, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. A time clock on the wall to my left will be in operation. A timekeeper seated at the table will also indicate when time is up. For the second part of the forum, a prepared question will be directed to a specific candidate. The candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. If other candidates wish to answer the same question, they will have 30 seconds to respond. For the third part of the forum, members of the audience are invited to write questions on the provided 3x5 card. A member of the sponsoring organizations will collect the questions. Audience questions should not be directed to one specific candidate, nor should the question be of a personal nature. A candidate will be selected to answer each audience question. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond, and if another candidate wishes to answer the same question, they will have 30 seconds to give their response. Finally, at the end of the audience question and answer period, each candidate will be given the opportunity to give closing remarks, and closing remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. At this time, I will introduce each candidate for school board. To my immediate right are candidates Mr. Larson and Ms. Crawford. To my immediate left are candidates Mr. Wilson and Ms. Weiss. Candidates, please turn your microphones off when you are not answering a question. And if you notice, there's a box right in front of you that operates your microphones. Thank you. We will now begin part 1 of the candidates forum for Beloit School Board. Each candidate will answer the following questions. Candidates are reminded of the 2-minute response time. Question number 1, our first candidate to answer the question will be Ms. Weiss. What do you think is the single most important issue facing the next school board, and what are your recommendations to resolve the issue?
First off, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I look forward to answering your questions. I believe the single most important issue facing the new board is the hiring of our new superintendent. That person will have to jump right in and be ready to lead. It's big shoes to fill, and I think the board is moving in the right direction as far as seeking advice from hiring firms to fill that position. I believe that the superintendent needs to listen and lead. Whoever fills that role needs to become a part of this community and really seek to understand before they act. I hope to be a part of that discussion. I think that as far as in our schools, it starts from the top and that trickles down all the way to the classroom and to our students. So that by far for me is the largest and most important issue facing the board.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, same question.
So thanks for being here, everyone, this evening and spending dinner time without dinner with us. And so I think in addition to the search for the most qualified superintendent for our district, we have some housekeeping to do within our district, and that starts with the board of directors. I assume that the dynamic of the board will change regardless of what two of the four of us on this stage will enter in with the board. But just like when you have new company at your house, you want to make sure it's clean before they come. And so that analogy simply means that we've got some cleaning up to do from top to bottom, whether that be with student achievement, parental engagement, parental involvement, expectations that we have for teachers, expectations that we have for administrators, expectations that we have for students, and what our district's long-term vision is in hiring a superintendent. But before we have company, we want to make sure that our house is clean enough and we're proud enough to have new company. So we've got some cleaning up to do, and the dynamic of the board will help us to lead that vision along with a new leader.
Thank you. And I'll repeat the question. What do you think is the single most important issue facing the next school board, and what are your recommendations to resolve the issue? Ms. Crawford.
Superintendent is a huge thing, obviously. Really, my focus right now is teacher retention. We lost 80-plus teachers last year. There's a reason why we're losing these teachers. I can't pinpoint it. There's some administration, that we probably need to, address. But I think a lot of it is maybe building administration too. There has to be support from the top all the way down. And, like David said, we need to make sure that our teachers are feeling supported and they have the basic necessities that they need to actually teach. And I think there's so much focus put on teachers to do other things other than just teach. They are counselors, caretakers. They have to feed our children. Some children sometimes they deal with the parental part of it because in real life our parental involvement in our school district is not very good. There's the same 5, 6 people that you see at everything for the most part, and we definitely have to step up as parents to take care of that. And I think if we step up as parents and the building administration steps up and the administration steps up and we show support to our teachers, I think that will keep our good teachers, and that will help us a lot with everything else.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, same question.
David and Kathy have referred to some issues in the district, but I think the most important path to resolving those issues will be hiring the new superintendent, because we have to make sure that we have someone who will be a good fit for Beloit, who is going to take those issues as seriously as we do. And we need someone who will unify the district as well as the community. We've become divided over the last few years. We need someone who's going to be an effective communicator, who's going to listen to all sides before making a decision. And then when a decision is made, not just saying this is where we're going, but then working to get everybody on board and go in that direction, so you have everybody kind of swimming the same way and headed the same direction, because that's the only way we're going to be able to turn some of these things around. They must have experience in a diverse community and come with a core set and belief that all children deserve a quality education. If we have make a good choice as superintendent, then that will make addressing teacher retention and discipline in the schools and cleaning house and taking care of some of these issues easier and more effective.
Thank you. Next question, and this will be directed to Mr. Larson. What specific skills and experience will you bring to the school board?
I taught in the district for 3.5 years, so I have a different perspective to our schools and their buildings and the students and the staff than others might have. And I'm still currently a teacher in the Delvin Darien School District, so that knowledge and understanding of a classroom and how it works will help me and guide me as I make decisions about funding or staffing or needs for the district. my focus will be on making sure that we have best practices in the classrooms and that the teachers and the building principals and the students are supported there, because that's how we're going to draw families into the district with everything that we have going on in the community, all the business expansions and coming to. We want them to stay in Beloit and live in Beloit and send their students here. And the best way to do that is make sure that we have that focus in the classroom.
Thank you. Ms. Crawford, same question.
I don't have any educational experience as far as teaching. What I would bring would basically be a parent who is concerned and a voice for the parents who don't always know what to say or what to ask. So a lot of times what I've realized now that I'm running for the board is that a lot of parents tell me things and ask me questions and want to know the answer. So I have been researching a lot more than I ever have been before, and I've learned a lot of things that are disappointing. And so when I talk to other parents, their biggest issues, I would bring that to the board. I will bring our concerns. I think that the board right now, the makeup of the board doesn't really represent Beloit per se. There's nobody that's like me on the board. There's nobody like Kyle. It's basically, I look at the board as a 20% of the representation of Beloit, and the other 80%, they really don't know what's going on. They kind of just put everybody under a blanket and make decisions. But they don't really know our children like they should to make better decisions for our children. So I think coming just from a common person, I can bring that experience and that knowledge to kind of have them look at it in a different way.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, same question.
I think that what I would bring to the board is not just one individual hat. All of us up here are parents, except for Sarah. I'm sure she'll get there one day. But being a parent is a hat that we all wear, first and foremost, outside of our careers and our jobs, and not being tied to one specific school building means that you've worked a long time to build relationships throughout the district. I think that's really important to know, that you can go into any school building and feel welcome and know that you're welcome and have existing relationships prior to wanting to become a school member. I feel like I've trained this my whole entire career and life to put me in front of you all today. And my body of work, professionally, civically, really speaks for itself, whether it's my career with the Boys and Girls Club or the School District of Beloit and now Visit Beloit, but also the mentoring and being a father and being a parent, and also being a black male. There is no representation of black people on the board, and not that I speak for all black people, but for people of color to feel comfortable and feel represented on the school board. Like Kathy said, the board doesn't represent what our community is, and I feel like not only will I bring the representation of a black person, but I also wear the hat of a father, a husband, a friend, a mentor, and all of these things are integral for anyone that wants to represent their community at large. Again, I've built my career on being a bridge builder, and know that it's important to have a relationship throughout the district and not just in one building or one classroom. So I think I bring a variety of strengths, professionally, civically, and personal relationships.
Thank you. Ms. Weiss, same question.
I grew up in education. Both my parents were teachers, one teaching in the district for a long time at various schools. In college, I got wrapped up in the world of education and was recently in a teacher preparation program. I'm a certified teacher in 2 states. I have experience working with students in a predominantly black high school in Philadelphia, and then as well as the middle school level in Milwaukee. I'm currently working with students who have been historically underrepresented. So I've kind of seen education from the behind the scenes, as the teacher in the classroom, as the volunteer tutor, as the advocate, giving voices to students who feel like they aren't being the best served that they can be. And I also believe that I have experience working with a diverse group of people. Working on the board, there's tons of voices in the room. You have to weigh options, be respectful of different professional voices, and ultimately you have to work together to work as a unified board. The power of the board rests in that it is one voice. And so I think my background, although I'm young, I think my background and the different experiences that I have would make me a good fit on the board.
Thank you. The next question will be directed to Mr. Wilson first. School safety is a topic of discussion in the news media today. Please discuss your thoughts regarding teachers being armed in the classroom and school safety in general.
I think our schools are safe overall. I was at the safety meeting that happened a few weeks ago, and we as a district can't stop crazy from happening or bad things. And I think we can be more responsive as a district in putting safeguards in place. There's a myriad of things that we can do as a district to make sure that we are as prepared as we can be when things may happen or go awry. But I think overall our schools are safe. Our schools are staffed and employed by professionals that are trusted to do their jobs, whether that's an SRO, whether that's an administrator, whether that's a teacher, whether that's a custodian. I think that a lot of the adults that we employ in the district are there to do their jobs, but not only do their jobs, but give kids the impression that they are safe and that this is a place for education, and the nurturing abilities of all those individuals really provides students with a feeling of safety, and that this is a area where education goes on. Obviously, the behaviors will happen because that's what kids bring to the table. But I think that our district is safe overall, and I'm very pleased with when I walk into a building that I feel safe as well. I am not in agreement with arming teachers with guns. They can do what they want to on their free time. However, more guns in a school does not equal safe to me. And I think that the SRO program is definitely in the developmental stages, and we do have some ways to go with the SRO relationship with our school district. But overall, I think our district is safe. Our SROs do the adequate enough job to where they have been trained and the agreements have been put in place for them to do, although we have quite a ways to go to put the safeguards in place that I think more people want and I think that we may need.
Mr. Wilson, you used the term SRO. Could you please define that acronym?
SRO is School Resource Officer, which is a police officer who is dedicated to one school building or another.
Thank you. Same question to Ms. Weiss.
I in no way support teachers being armed with guns for a number of reasons. One of them being, I think, it does not make everybody comfortable in the room, especially for our students of color, especially for our teachers of color, our administrators of color. There's a lot of things that can go wrong and a lot of variables as soon as a firearm enters a room. I think one important aspect as we make decisions regarding school safety is that we shouldn't be deciding things out of fear. We can jump to crazy conclusions and see the worst case scenarios. But at the end of the day, kind of echoing what David was saying, our schools should be inviting, our schools should feel comfortable, our schools should be open and clean. And that has a lot of just a great impact on student success and students wanting to go to school every day. I think that one thing that I'm curious about and want to explore as far as school safety is the amount of entrances and exits to our school buildings. I know that we have plans in place for emergencies, and obviously we need all those doors so people can go out. But at times, even though they're locked on the outside, there are ways to get into those doors. And I think as far as metal detectors and things like that go, I think that's kind of making decisions out of fear. I think metal detectors kind of put up a front, and at the end of the day, the bad things can still get in, no matter if you have a metal detector or not. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, same question.
It's our job as the adults in the district to make sure that we have the best policies and plans in place if something terrible were to happen, and think ahead. Actually, I worked for the district, and I didn't realize until I came to a school board meeting a couple weeks ago that we actually have a consultant who helps us create these emergency plans, so it's not just a group of administrators coming together and saying, what would we do if? So, there are people with experience in these situations to help create the plan. And I know that the school board and the administrators are currently looking and evaluating the plan. Students have expressed an interest in helping decide what they do, especially at the high school. Right now the district initiative is to hide and stay safe, but other districts are starting to change that. Run if you can, hide. I also went to the safety panel a couple weeks ago at the high school, and it was really educational, and that's where I heard some of the voices of the students giving feedback to the administrators as they talked on a walkthrough. And the students really seem to want to take an ownership of this. It's their building too. They want to be part of that decision-making process. So I think it's important to give the students resources and empower them to create a culture in the schools where violence isn't tolerated, or you don't open the door for your friend out. You don't open that locked door. Some of the students have talked about the resource officers and building good relationships with them, and also having the students be educated about taking social media threats seriously and reporting. One of the resource officers told a story about someone who had posted something on Snapchat, and it was sent to 30 people, but only 4 people called the police department. So we can look at that as success that 4 people actually did, but there were 26 who still didn't.
Thank you. Same question, Ms. Crawford.
So I might go against the grain here. I don't think that teachers should have guns, but I do believe that we need maybe an armed, maybe the resource officers that are trained to carry a firearm. Because if you look at what happened in Maryland, he stopped what could potentially have been a horrible thing. Not that I want anybody to die, but the thing is this, is that when my daughter comes home from school scared out of her mind, and I know we don't want them to live in fear, but the reality is that this is not like it was 10 years ago. Things are not like they were. And, I am for metal detectors. I think that it might not solve everything, but I think it will deter a lot of behavior. I know it might look like an eyesore, and maybe, admitting that it's not as safe as we'd like to believe. We don't live in a world where it's safe, and I think that we need to start acting like it. We want the kids to go to school and feel safe. I have a son that's at the high school. He was petrified. That's something that I deal with, and I'm sure Kyle deals with. They're scared to go to school sometimes. And for me as a parent, and I'm sure as other parents, it's hard for us to tell them it's going to be okay, because every week there's a shooting and every week there's something going on, and they don't feel safe. I couldn't imagine going to school when I went to school and not feel safe going to school. The worst we had to worry about is somebody fighting. Now they have to worry about somebody, having a moment and, trying to kill them, things like that. I think that we definitely have to have something else in place besides just running and hiding, because at the end of the day, guns can shoot off doors, locks, and get in and, kill, potentially it could be disastrous.
Thank you. We will now start with the second part of the form with a prepared question that will be directed to a specific candidate. The candidate's answer will be limited to 2 minutes. If another candidate wants to respond to the same question, the candidate will be limited to a 30-second response. The first question goes to Ms. Crawford. The newly released state report card shows the school district of Beloit continues to struggle with academic achievement among its student body. Beloit's overall report card score was 61.9 points, placing the district in the meets few expectations category, ranking as a 2-star school district out of 5 stars. What resources do you feel are needed to address this issue?
I went on DPI and I did a lot of research, and I knew that our scores were fairly low. And I believe that we just need to make sure that we are teaching the kids so they can learn. I think a lot of our problem is that we're teaching our kids to test, because testing is so important, and it, gives our school district money, or, I don't want to say money, but like it makes it more appealing if we have very high test scores. But what's happening is that our kids are, there's anxiety with these kids because some kids just don't test well. So we need to figure out a way to teach these kids the way they're going to learn. I think that a lot of teachers have been stripped of their creativity because it's all about teaching the test, and this is what I understand, and I could be wrong, but from what I've talked to other teachers and some of the kids, it's just not fun anymore. They're not learning like they should. And also, we shove an iPad in their face most of the day. So they're taken away from their social skills, and they don't have anything tangible to take home. If my 8th grader comes home and still has homework to do, he can't do it because he can't bring his iPad home, which is, it's making these kids suffer, and then they don't have the resources right there to look at it. If you're studying for a test and you don't have your iPad because everything's on the iPad, how are you going to study for that test? Everybody doesn't have the luxury of having an iPad at home. Some kids don't have internet. I just think that we have to figure out a different way. We have to be more creative and really make better choices when it comes to letting these teachers teach the way they need to teach.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer the same question? Mr. Wilson first.
And so I think that we as a district have to focus more on meeting the needs. And obviously our main focus is educational needs, but we know that our kids come to school with more needs than just educational needs, whether it's not wearing any socks in January, or not eating breakfast, not wearing any underwear in January, or not having any lights when they go home. So while I think that education is definitely first and foremost, we have to meet the needs of the parents and families and provide resources that they feel safe in accessing. We also have to hold.
Thank you. Remember, 30 seconds is very short. Any other candidate wishing to answer the question? Yes. Ms. Weiss.
I just want to note that recently we adopted 2 new math curricula, and those take time to see results from that. And I also want to add that I think there needs to be a push from school administrators to make sure that teachers are teaching to objectives and not just teaching to get through the material.
Thank you. Mr. Larson.
One of the other things that we need to work harder at is getting family involvement and looking at providing the supports, child care resources, offering things at different times of the days, because in high poverty districts, it's essential that you have family involvement. And, we know that our families are working second, third shift during the day, working 2 jobs maybe, but making sure that we have programming for them and are welcoming to them coming into the schools.
Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Larson. As a potential member of the Beloit Board of Education, what is your responsibility to recruit and maintain a diverse group of staff and administrators? How, in your opinion, does this benefit students and the larger Beloit community?
As a member of the school district or the school board, it's important to make sure that we are recruiting and maintaining a staff that's reflective of the student body. I think it's very important to the students to see an adult who's a teacher who maybe came from similar background as they did, or is the same color, or has same beliefs as them, because sometimes our kiddos are so focused in day to day that having a respectable adult in front of them who has made it through and is on the other side can really make a powerful connection with that student and help them through those tougher times, and give them hope that we can get through this, but there is something there is good on the other side, and everything will be okay.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer the same question? Mr. Wilson?
No, I think it's our obligation to recruit and retain a diverse staff. I think that we as Beloit are a diverse community because a lot of different people from different backgrounds move here. But I think that's just what communities are. I think the part of the work is inclusion and making sure that the people that we recruit and retain feel safe and feel like they have an opportunity to build a life and a family here. The impact on students will go well beyond the walls of a classroom, because again, when those students see and hear people that look like them and sound like them and have similar interests and religions and backgrounds and dress the same, they see something in that person or those persons in those formidable years that they are driven to become or aspire to.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the same question? Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Wilson. There seems to be an ongoing conversation regarding student discipline among community members and school district staff. Please specifically address what proposals you would bring forward as a board member to administration to address student discipline beyond looking at the student code of conduct. Fantastic question.
And so while I think that students will continue to come to school and display behaviors, it is our response as adults to those behaviors that's what's going to help those students become more successful in curbing those behaviors. And so I'm a firm believer that restorative practices is a viable solution among the cocktail of things that will help us to improve student discipline. When we give students and parents and families and administrators and teachers an opportunity to have a voice in what is going to help them be served best, what they can do to make things correct, I think that when they're given this opportunity, it's enlightening, it's empowering, it also teaches empathy. I was among the group of individuals as a partner when I worked for the school State Line Boys and Girls Club in 2014 to visit Madison La Follette High School and see their evolution within their code of conduct regarding restorative practices. And they involve students, they involve teachers, they involve the community, and the school district of Beloit has a commitment to restorative practices. I've been a part of many trainings and firsthand some circles that have had some solutions, and also taught individuals that I have feelings too, and because they're not learning empathy at home, restorative practices gives them an outlet inside their school buildings, inside their classrooms, to build that sense of community, which is so important when students are not learning this elsewhere besides school. While teachers are here to educate, they also have a responsibility to offer relationship building skills to their students, families, and we hope that that trickles out into their school building and into our community. And I think restorative practices is among the cocktail of things, and looking at the code of conduct and making it more responsive to the behaviors that we're seeing.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer the same question? Yes, Ms. Crawford.
I believe that restorative practices would work best maybe the elementary school level. I think once the child enters intermediate school, we'll take 4th and 5th grade and keep that. But there's a time where there's a child that they have to be accountable for their actions, and there has to be some kind of consequence. When you become an adult, you don't get to talk about your feelings at work. It's either you take care of this or you get fired. So I think that as they get older, even though some parts of restorative practices I do like, but I think we have to, look at it as a whole, and we need to start teaching our children to be accountable for their actions.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer the same question? Mr. Larson?
I agree that restorative practices should be focused on really in the elementary schools, and then also as another form of support for older children. My concern is they need to be taught that empathy when they're young, but then kind of what Kathy was saying, how do you transition them then from restorative justice in the elementary schools to prepare them for a life after they graduate from our schools, for a job or college or a tech school?
Thank you. Ms. Weiss?
I think restorative justice practices can be beneficial if they are wholeheartedly and fully committed to throughout the building and through everybody in the district. I also want to add, Kathy talked about student accountability, but as far as discipline goes, I think another great factor in it is teacher accountability and principal and administrator accountability. We, as the adults, have to step up and make sure that we are monitoring students appropriately and we are responding appropriately.
Thank you. And Ms. Weiss, you get the last individual question. Please discuss your understanding of the current mental health of our students and what resources should the district commit to address student mental health issues.
As one thing that I really want to focus on when talking about mental health is also trauma. A lot of our students have experienced some exposure to trauma, and they bring that into the school, into the classroom with them. And I think that's where restorative justice practices can also meet our students where they are. A lot of mental health issues in our district lead to disciplinary problems, and if those are treated as just disciplinary, then we're not doing the student justice. There's other ways that we can serve that student. We have a lot of partnerships with local health centers. I think there's always more that can be done, and I think that that's the responsibility of the teachers and the principals. I think that mental health is something that affects every part of the student's day. And it is a critical importance that we serve those students, and we serve those students well.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer the same question? Ms. Crawford?
Obviously, there's always going to be someone that has some mental health issues, and like Sarah said, it could trickle down into discipline. What I would like to see is when there is an issue with discipline, if they actually took time out, the counselors or somebody that's on staff, to talk to the child instead of just putting them in a room and giving them a book to read or telling them not to talk. I think that if they actually made the initiative to talk to these kids and really find out what's going on, some of the discipline could be rectified, and then they could forward them to the proper, through the proper channels, because I know that at Beloit Memorial they have a whole counseling center there, which is great. And she's going to do the stop, so we're just going to stop right there.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
I think expanding grants that we have going on in the district to make sure they're in every school to help connect families and students with the mental health resources. Also, kind of piggyback off what Kathy said about the social workers, the counselors in the schools. They're on the list of people to call if something's going wrong in the classroom. And so just like a principal, they're often running around, trying to calm a child down in a classroom, taking them back to their office. So I would like to see more counselors in the buildings so that we can decrease the discipline. But then there are also people who are able to have support groups for, divorce or major life changes, or to check in with the kids and help teach them social skills if they needed more support from the classroom.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer the same question? Mr. Wilson?
And so while mental health issues are going to continue to be part of our school district as well as other school districts around the nation and the world, I think the deliberate work of the school districts and the communities that those mental health issues are prevalent in are going to be key in our approach to it. So the mental health issues that are prevalent and that we have a network of resources to serve, I think it's our responsibility to serve those mental health issues or whatever issues through psychologists or school social workers, the network of healthcare providers that we have in this area.
Thank you. I will now begin with questions from the audience. Audience questions will be directed to a specific candidate selected by the moderator. Candidates are reminded of the 2-minute response time. If another candidate wants to answer the same question, you will have 30 seconds. The first audience question will go to Ms. Weiss. Describe your methods for making difficult decisions. Give an example if you can.
Can you repeat that?
Describe your methods for making difficult decisions. Give an example if you can.
When making difficult decisions, I like to hear from all sides, weigh all options. I assume that if it's a difficult decision, that it's a pretty important one as well. And I think as it pertains to the board, my role would be one to listen and to do my research to make sure that I can confidently decide for not only myself but for the families and for the students in our district. So kind of my methods being, weighing all sides, listening to experts, seeking advice, and then kind of weighing what the priorities are in that situation and making a final decision. As for an example, I think I make difficult decisions regarding students in my work, and there are many that come to mind, but I think, again, listening to that student in that moment, making sure that I know exactly what's going on so that I don't have unintended consequences is especially important. And then from there, I know how to move forward.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer the same question? Mr. Wilson?
My approach to handling difficult decisions is to listen first, confer with subject matter experts and the professionals that deal in that area, and to, again, weigh the perspective of perception versus reality and really learn to understand the outcome of what those decisions and how those decisions will impact, but also are those decisions and impact measurable? An example is I belong to the United Way Black Hawk Region Community Impact Council, and we are responsible for making the recommendations to the Board of Directors as far as what community agencies will receive funding for a 2-year cycle. And in that room, we make some tough decisions as far as giving you less, giving you more, or giving you none. And that involves a committee of 5 other individuals, including myself, and at the end of the day, the impact of those funding decisions.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? The next question from the audience will be directed to Mr. Larson. Do you think it is imperative that the superintendent and all administrators live in the Beloit area?
I think that it's important that they live close to the community and in the community so that they understand more about Beloit and who we are, and really become a part of the community. And I think it is also looking as a stakeholder in the community. It also shows maybe a level of commitment moving here, or and living and working with the people who you are responsible for. So I wouldn't say that it's imperative, but it is something that I would like to see.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the same question? Miss Crawford?
Sometimes I'm torn on this question. I feel like if a superintendent maybe doesn't live specifically in Beloit, but they are vested in our community, I'm open to that. If they shop here, they're here all the time, they talk to people in the community, I'm open to them. They might live somewhere else. They're not able to, move here right away. Eventually, I would like them to move here, but if they are somewhere and they live somewhere else, but they are vested in our community, that's what we want anyways. People could live here and still not be vested in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
And so I think in this case, regardless of what I feel or not, I think I would defer to the policy that our board has set. And it's not a policy that states any administrator or district employee has to live in our district. But I'm going to quote one of my favorite rap groups: if they walk it like they talk it, and they are active in our community, and we can see them and touch them and see them at the events early in the morning, late at night, regardless of where they live at, I think if they are truly invested in our community, they will be here. It's their gas, it's their miles that they're paying for, that our district is paying them for. And so I think an investment in our community is more important than where their address is.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? Yes. Ms. Weiss.
I think it is important for our superintendent to live in the city, not so much other administrators. And the only difference there for me is that I think superintendents have less one-on-one and personal connections. I think a lot of times they're a little bit far more removed than other administrators are, than like principals and things like that. And so that's the only reason that I think I personally, if I were a superintendent, I would want to live in the place where I work, because I think that says a lot to the community that you're entering, that you're willing to fully commit and be a part of this community.
Thank you. The next question will go to Ms. Crawford. As a board member, how will you help support our teachers and encourage better teacher retention?
It's my favorite. Basically, when we talk to the board, I've talked to a few people on the board, and we definitely have to be more involved in the schools and listen to the teachers and what they need. I think that if we're more transparent and we're more accessible to them if they have a need, and we're able to, talk amongst us and try to figure out something that's going to be, feasible for them, I think that they'll feel more supported, and they'll stay longer, and they'll feel like we actually care about them. And I think at the end of the day, no matter how you look at anything, when you're at work, if you don't feel like you're appreciated, you really don't like your job very much. And so I think once they start feeling more appreciated, and once our school district as a whole, can keep really good teachers and keep people here, I think that it will be better.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer? Mr. Larson?
Right away, I think something we could do is get a feel on our teachers by doing a climate survey and try to keep the teachers that we still have. I know the board just voted down hiring a third party to conduct exit interviews. But also supporting the teachers. For example, we have some great new programs in the buildings this year, and making sure that incoming teachers have professional development surrounding those. Often in our district, we have a great professional development push that year we're rolling it out, but then teachers that come after that miss that. Our teacher mentoring program has kind of been whittled away down to a formality. And then just ensuring that they have a voice.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? Yes, Mr. Wilson.
I think it's going to be key to provide a really strong mentoring relationship with veteran teachers and new teachers, and there's going to have to be ongoing support, whether that be professional development, networking opportunities for teachers just to sit and talk about best practices and not sit there and complain. I think we as a district need to be more responsive to teachers' successes as well as their challenges, so we as a district can evolve and grow to best serve the needs of our students, parents, and families.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss.
I think listening to teachers is the first step. Everybody wants to be heard, but I also think that one thing that I would look to do is to cut back on all of the extra that teachers have to do, the paperwork. You can tell if you value somebody, if you value their time, and so we need to value our teachers' times. We need to make sure that everything that they're putting forth is for their classroom and not all of this extra. That could be hiring an extra body in the school to pick up all of the parts that teachers inevitably pick up.
Thank you. The next question will go to Mr. Wilson. What assurances can voters have that family ties will have no bearing on a board member's decisions?
Great question. And so, again, I'm going to refer to the policy that's already been set in place that protects myself, my wife, and other people that may seem to think that I can't separate business from a little pleasure. Similar to the precedent that's already been set, we have an existing board member whose husband owns a construction firm. And so, when there are votes or bids on those improvements or capital improvements, she leaves the room and she can't vote. And so, not that I'm as smart as her, but I know when it's time for me to leave the room and I can't vote.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer the same question? Yes, Ms. Crawford. Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer? Thank you. The next question will go to Mr. Larson. Could you please tell us your opinion on state school vouchers? Does it hurt public schools? Do you think there should be more?
I do believe that state school vouchers hurt our public schools. The justification for issuing the vouchers is that it's a failing school, and so a family should have the right to take their child to a school that is, showing more success than private school. In my mind, it's counterproductive to take money from a struggling school who could use that money and give it to a private school.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer? Mr. Wilson?
And so while our kids do attend public school, I don't necessarily agree with public school money leaving our district to fund, students to go to another district. However, the school district of Beloit can't be the only district that loses in the voucher process. And so we as a district have to look at the reasons why these students are leaving and what it is that we can do to either understand why students are leaving, because at the end of the day, if this family is faith-based and they want to send their kids to a faith-based school, then there's nothing that our district can do to keep those students because they're going to rely on faith-based education.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer? Thank you. The next question will go to Ms. Weiss. What is your perception and or opinion of the school-to-prison pipeline as it relates to discipline?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? There's a lot in there.
What is your perception and or opinion of the school-to-prison pipeline as it relates to discipline?
Yeah, this goes back to we have to represent all of our students, and I think that right now this is a larger problem than just the city of Beloit, and one that's affecting our whole country. That when we as a school can't properly educate a child, then that leaves them to a lot of other options, and especially for our students of color, that overwhelmingly, by comparison, leads more towards prison. So that's kind of where the school to prison pipeline. I think that parts of restorative justice, to me, one important part of restorative justice is that we recognize that teachers are humans and that we have biases, and everybody has biases that we are unaware of, except when it's the teacher, all of a sudden you're making tough decisions and you're disciplining a child, and we have to make sure that those are fair and equitable, and that we're not over-disciplining certain populations of our students. Our students should be in school to learn, and when they're not in the school, then that leads to more violence. It leads to bad decision making for teens, and so we as a school, education is imperative. It's critical to function as a society.
Thank you. Any other candidate wishing to answer? Mr. Wilson?
So I think it starts with awareness of the comparisons that we make when we talk about what we do in school that's relative to the things that they do in prison. And so when students are directed to walk down the hall quietly with their hands behind their back, what does that look like? And so we have to be aware as adults when we put those systematic things in place while they're in the best interests of students, we feel. We have to be aware of how this will affect them outside of the classroom and after they leave our district. I think there are some systematic things that exist along with our biases as humans that we as a district need to address to ensure that students are served best.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? Yes, Ms. Crawford.
I went on the website of DPI and I looked at the different discipline compared to the expulsion. And what troubled me is that over half of the suspensions are African Americans. And because I have 6 African American children in my own home, that scares me because it seems like no matter what school you're at, these kids are targeted, and we need to figure out why they're targeted for behavioral issues and compared to their white counterpart.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? Yes, Mr. Larson.
One thing I'm excited about that they're doing in the district, and I think may help this a little bit, is are the academies that they're starting in the high school. So incoming as a freshman, they have different career paths, early childhood education, culinary, a variety of different things that will get students interested in a particular area and will make school more interesting for them.
Thank you. The next question will go to Mr. Wilson. How will you encourage greater parental involvement in our schools?
And so throughout my professional and civic career, I've been blessed to be in many rooms that most of the people don't look like me. And in those rooms, I'm able to voice an opinion that's unseen or unheard. And through those conversations that we have in those rooms, I think it really allows people to think differently about the population that they serve because I'm safe. And I think that when we talk about when we're in the rooms where everybody looks like us, it comes down to building relationships with people that trust you and believe what you're saying. And I've built my professional and civic career on being honest with integrity. And fortunately or unfortunately, at the time that I had to walk away from the Boys and Girls Club, it was because I didn't believe in the direction that it was going, because I couldn't tell the people that I served and the people that knew me best that it's going to be okay. And I think that that's important when we talk about building relationships and earning people's trust, that they have to know that through the thick and through the thin, they might not like what you say, but if they trust you and you have a relationship with them, you can say a lot more things to them, and they will understand or learn to understand that at the end of the day, you have their best intentions in mind, and that you stand for something, and that's honesty, integrity, and my truth and my experiences when I'm in the rooms that they're not represented in.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? The question? How will you encourage greater parental involvement in our schools?
Well, I think that for our schools itself, they need to be more inviting to parents, because sometimes when parents go into the schools, they're not welcomed and they're not addressed, and we kind of just sit there. I've watched it myself. We kind of just sit there and wait for somebody to acknowledge us. Also, a lot of parents are scared to ask questions, so we need to make them feel more comfortable with asking questions. I think a lot of things are misunderstood because some parents are not educated enough or don't feel like they're educated enough to maybe talk to a principal or talk to the teacher. So I think as a teacher, as a principal, as an administrator, we need to make sure that you are talking to the parents and making them feel welcome so they feel better about asking questions.
Thank you. Mr. Larson?
It also comes with a definition of family involvement, and also different families have different levels of comfort about how involved they are. So some parents may be totally comfortable coming in and reading with their group of kids. Some parents would rather sit in the lounge and cut out laminating or help prep things. So offering different kinds of activities and during different times of the days, but then also providing like childcare. We live in a high poverty district, so we have to acknowledge that there are going to be barriers like childcare, mealtime, job schedules that are going to make it hard for parents and families to want to be involved. And again, kind of asking parents how comfortable are they and how would they like to be involved.
Anyone else wishing to answer the question? Nope, I think I covered everyone. Thank you. The next question will be directed to Ms. Crawford. The school board has selected the search firm to assist in hiring the superintendent. What qualifications do you want the search firm to ensure each candidate possesses before they are brought forth for interviews?
The biggest thing is I want them to be vested in our community. They have to know what they're getting into, and they have to have a positive attitude, and they need to go into this knowing that we have a lot of struggles right now, and they have to be sure that they can handle these struggles. And they have to be confident in who they are and what they do, and they know that they're going to come up against a lot of things because we've had a rough time right now. But I think if we get somebody in here who is vested and really cares about our community, I think that we should be able to find a good candidate or actually a good fit for our community.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? Mr. Wilson.
I think our incumbent superintendent needs to be first a visionary. I think that's going to be key in either building his or her own team or taking the team that already exists and weeding through the ones that really don't want to be here. I think we need a bridge builder versus a wall builder, and to know that that person has all the relationships in our community that exist on the table, and know that he or she is the one that's to nurture those relationships to become supportive, and know that that person can look behind them at any point in time and see people to follow.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? Mr. Larson.
The superintendent needs to be someone who can bring the community and the district together with the challenges that we're facing. It's not something that the district alone can solve, and we need community involvement. And I feel there are rifts forming, and we need someone who can listen to all sides, get everybody on board, and like I said earlier, kind of have everybody swimming the same way. And I was able to sit down in interviews for the firms, and the idea of hiring a superintendent is very overwhelming, but after listening to the firms, I felt very much assured that there's going to be a lot of community involvement, and that as well as teacher and administrative input, and that we can find someone who will be a good fit and do those things that we need to do, and that any candidate coming to Beloit is going to know what's happening in our district.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Weiss.
I think our new superintendent needs to have a willingness to serve this community, and I would like them to have experience working with a similar population or type of school district. I also think that they need to be a positive voice for our community and build off the great things that we're already doing here.
Thank you. The next question will be directed to Mr. Larson. Do you support the Beloit 2020 plan, phases 2 through 4, to buy up homes across the street from the high school, sometimes forcibly by eminent domain, to replace them with sports fields?
I do not support the 2020 plan to forcibly purchase homes and put sports fields there. There are people's homes, and there are people involved. It's not just dollar signs. And I just really, I just don't support it.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer the question? I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson.
I do support the Beloit 2020 plan. I think an investment in our community says a lot about our community and our school district in being progressive. While eminent domain is a tough decision to make, I think to make that decision says more about our school district and community than saying that we have thrown people out. If we all drive up Maple Avenue, I knew people, Frida and TT and Boo Boo, that stayed in Maple in those houses, and I spent the night in those houses as a young person, and they're still here in Beloit. And I think that shows that while it might have been a sour subject in their home during eminent domain when they were forced to move and they drive past the green space, however, an investment in our community says more about those individual homes on a broader sense than just kicking people out, because that's not what eminent domain is.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford.
I don't support Beloit 2020. The biggest reason is that you can't put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound and expect it's not going to bleed out. Like, we can make these beautiful fields and these beautiful buildings, but at the end of the day, we don't have the people in the buildings to make sure that why they're there. We don't have the teachers, we don't have the staff. So we're just putting this, nice little bow on an empty box. It's the best way I can explain it.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to answer? Yes, Ms. Weiss.
I do support Beloit 2020. I think we need to be able to attract and retain quality teachers. I think we need to remain competitive. We need to be the choice in Beloit, and we need to make sure that we keep all of our students and families. We need to remain competitive, although, I wish I guess I would have gotten to learn more about the plan and what other options there were besides resorting to eminent domain. As far as the campus feel that 4th Street will become and all of the fields right on campus, I did not want it to resort to that, but I think it is an investment in our future.
Thank you. That concludes the audience question answer section of the forum. I apologize if I wasn't able to get to all of the questions. Each candidate will now have the opportunity to give closing remarks. Closing remarks will be limited to 2 minutes, and I'll begin with Ms. Weiss.
First off, thank you to everyone who came out tonight. Thanks for listening to everything that we had to say, and thank you for your questions. Thank you to my family, friends, and community members for your support and encouragement throughout the past couple months. It really does mean the world to me. My focus is really on teacher morale, post-graduation prep, and equitable decision-making. On April 3rd, you should vote Weiss because I am committed to all students, teachers, and families. I believe we have some outstanding teachers here in Beloit, and we need to reinvest in them. We need to value their expertise and long hours and outpouring of compassion. We need to do our best to make sure they're happy and healthy and set up for success in the classroom to do best for our students. We also need to keep focused on preparing our students to graduate and to succeed beyond Beloit schools. All of our families need a voice, whether or not they're in the highest achieving school, the program that raises the most revenue, or at a school I have a deep connection to. I'm running because I know I can be an advocate for all students. On April 3rd, please vote Weiss because I promise to act with care, transparency, and love for my city and its students. Thanks again, and thank you to everyone who put on this great event.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
So thank you all for being here again for dinner time and whatever your favorite TV show time is. So professionally, I think my body of work really speaks loudly for my community involvement, community engagement, program building, and supportive networks and relationships that I've built. Those things have all prepared me to sit in front of you today. And you might not like my outfit, but we can agree to disagree about that and really talk about the issues that really affect our city and great community of Beloit. As I continue upon my journey to continue serving this district regardless of the outcome of this election or not, my work in this district and this community began long before I decided to run for school board. And my experience of serving on a board of directors and many different communities throughout the community across different sectors has afforded me opportunities to represent something much greater than my individual talents will ever bring. While collectively serving with others with tact and decorum to make those important decisions that will impact a lot more people than I know. I'm proud to be a Beloiter, a father, a son, a mentor, a husband, and I'm very, very passionate about serving the city of Beloit and the school district. If elected to the seat, I'll always act with integrity, honesty, be fair, firm, and consistent. There's so much to learn in this role, and I'm very committed to learning the challenges of the district as well as the different dynamics that our board will bring. I'm excited to have an equal share in the opportunity to serve you all, and fortunately or unfortunately, I'm prepared to be unapologetic about many of the concerns that we face as a district. And so on April 3rd, when you vote for Wilson for school board, feel free to select somebody else.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
So on April 3rd, I'm asking you to vote for Kyle Larson because I take this responsibility very, very seriously. It's going to be very hard to take the needs of our teachers, our students, our buildings, and our district as a whole, and even our community as a whole, and weigh them against what the community is looking for and wants. You're responsible to, and you serve so many different people in the community. But I really do want to make sure that our schools have what they need to be successful, the teachers, the students, and make sure that every child is successful. You know, one of the reasons that problems I have with the 2020 project is that the tax dollars and the money that would be going for kind of what Kathy said about a field rather than putting it in the classroom where that's going to make the most difference. That's going to draw people to our district. And if they're coming here for a fancy field, then, you know, then I think that's wrong. So I want to be a very good, transparent steward of tax dollars and the precious resources coming into our district. And I will work hard collaboratively with the administration and other board members to resolve some issues that we have in our district, but then also, and more importantly, to celebrate the great successes that we have.
Thank you. Ms. Crawford?
Well, I'm not the most well-spoken person, so bear with me. At the end of the day, we all want change. And at this point, if you're going to complain about something and you don't step up and at least try to make a change, then you really don't have anything to say. And this is where I decided I wanted to run for board. You know, win or lose, nothing's going to change. I'm still going to coach the kids. I'm still going to be here for the community. I think that being on the board, just as a person like me, you know, a common person, I don't have a lot of, you know, board experience. I don't have a lot of educational experience. I went to college for a few years, decided to work a normal job like everybody else for the most part. But this affects our kids, and nothing is more important than our kids at this point. I don't care how many fancy buildings you have. I don't care how many fancy fields you have. I don't care about any of that, because when our kids are suffering because we can't give them the basic things that they need, and we can't support the code of conduct is huge for me. I think that we need to go back to that. I think that once we're going to take a hit because we need to start reporting discipline numbers and things like that. I think that that is important. But I think that we're doing our children a disservice at this point. I don't think that we're preparing them for the real world. And I think that there's somebody that needs to say that. I think that people don't say what they mean. Everybody wants to fall into line because they don't want anybody to be mad at them or say something negative about them. At this point, I'm going to say what I feel. And if I get on the board, I might be the odd man out, but at least I kept my promise. I don't have an agenda, but I do have an objective, and I want to make sure that somebody like me is able to, if somebody like me gets on the board and makes a difference, then people are going to follow suit, and they're going to have more confidence to do the same thing, and you're going to see a turnaround. Trust me. So vote for Kathy Crawford.
Thank you. I would like to thank each candidate for the Beloit Board of Education for their participation in tonight's forum. Thanks to the League of Women Voters of Beloit, the NAACP Beloit Chapter, and the Greater Beloit Area Chamber of Commerce for providing this opportunity. And thank you, members of the audience, for your attendance and participation. Thank you and good evening.